Hello, everyone. Today we are here for our panel, Hybrid Forms, New Technologies and Performing Arts, as part of Istanbul Fringe Festival 2021 Hybrid. And this year, the festival is taking place between 18th and 26th of September 2021 in physical venues and on digital platforms with video streamings and digital creations. In this panel, we pursue our seek to understand the new developments in the field and to reflect upon them collectively. I'm Zeynepur, Cultural Policy Director of Istanbul Fringe Festival, and I'm very happy to host today Jakob la Cour, co-founder of Copenhagen-based XR Black Box, and Burcu Yasemin Şeyben, theorist at College of Southern Idaho, and author of Theatre and Multimedia, which is published on 2016 in Habitus in Turkish. She's also an actress and a playwright. And Deniz Ançay is with us today. He is the co-artistic director of Istanbul Fringe, also a PhD candidate in industrial engineering, specialized on innovation. So the concern of this panel is that the digitalization of performing arts that became a hot topic with COVID-19 for sure. However, the use of new technologies in performing arts date way before the pandemics and is a much broader subject. Multimedia technologies, augmented reality, and virtual reality transform the forms of storytelling and staging. New technologies create different space configurations, spectator experiences, and thus enable new ways of relating with the creation on the stage. So new technological tools create hybrid forms, blurring the lines between theater, cinema, and virtual reality. Audiences are exposed to new experiences that transform the relationship between spectator and the creation on the stage, which is maybe one of our main concerns. And to start our discussion, I would like to directly attack the heart of our conversation. So hybrid and hybridity are the notions that we most commonly use to depict new forms born from the encounter between the physical and the digital on the stage. It is also this year's theme for Istanbul Fringe. So I would like to ask to our participants, what does hybrid stand for in this context for you? So Burcu, in your book, Theatre and Multimedia, you're evoking this concept a lot and in a very interesting way, if I may say. So would you like to start with your take on the concept of hybrid maybe?
Yeah, can you hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I wrote the book in 2016, I think the digital reality was actually not the norm, but it was one of the technologies that was used to be able to perform hybrid productions. So when I was looking at it, I was actually trying to understand how the new technologies sort of merge with theater to create these forms, and came up with topics like telematic performances or virtual reality performances or other forms of performances that actually merge cinema and theater together. And artificial intelligence, of course, was one of the other things that I looked at. And the thing that came most was the question of how to integrate audiences to the performances and how to create a form that's neither this nor that, but carries the aspects of both and does not undermine the one and the other. And as I was writing this, I think there was like a strong reaction, especially in Turkey, to the hybrid forms, because theater was something, liveness was something that was almost held sacred, right? And that was, I was actually trying to overcome that fear of engaging with the technologies in the performances. And that's why I use that technological term or experience term, hybrid, a lot. Of course, with that came the immersion of the audiences into the performances, or how to embed them into the performances, which was one of the other concerns, because with the technologies, people thought that the spectator will be estranged they wouldn't be part of that performance, and there will be some kind of an alienation caused by that technological interface. And that's also one of the things that I was trying to make clear, that actually the technologies were trying to do the opposite, immerse the audiences to the form so that they became even much more part of the performance that was going on than the live theater. And I still believe the same, and I think it's becoming more and more. And yeah, this is maybe my initial remarks about hybridity.
Mm-hmm. Jakob, maybe you can continue with your take on the concept of hybrid in your works and XR Black Box, and also maybe you can present more XR Black Box. What are you doing there?
Yeah, hybrid is a thing made by combining two different elements. So in our case, it's combining extended reality technologies and the performing arts. So in XR Black Box, we have like focused on that fusion, which has opened a lot of exploration into different areas like embodied head-mounted displays, interactive 3D environments, participatory performance, and other technologies. So for example, the latest piece we have here, which is actually our first real pilot piece that we have had a run of 2 times now. So version 1 and version 2. In that one, we also work with the artificial intelligence and exploring like VR, AI, XR, and performing arts. So it's a hybrid between all of that. Yeah, and I think my during this pandemic, my concern has always been about like how can we preserve liveness and presence when we introduce technologies. And I've been doing like 2 major pieces. So Artificial Awakening with VR and so on, and the other piece was a piece that I did with a Danish theater called Luna Secunda, and we did like we call it cinematic theater, and we streamed a theater piece with 4 one-take cameras that was live edited every night. So I have those 2 kind of pieces with me here today, and I want to share a little more about that when we come deeper into the conversation.
Yes, these are very interesting projects, and I prepared questions precisely to talk more about them actually. Maybe just before, I would like to ask to Denizhan if you want to step in about the concept of hybrid and hybridity, and also maybe you can talk about how Istanbul Fringe Festival takes this concept this year.
Yes, sure. I would love to talk about a bit what is hybrid for us in the festival, because it's a very broad subject. Even we use it in automobiles. But I would love to mention that it's a form of synergy, that we combine the things to make it more. In our case, I think it was an obligation for us at first, of course, to take it in online for the first year. But this year, we also have physical shows and the online events like this, for example. And in that way, we are trying to engage more people in a more collaborative atmosphere, I think. In that way, we can also link to other fringe festivals, which is also a part of us, and which makes it special in Istanbul to have these connections with other fringe festivals. So for us now, hybrid festival means combining physical togetherness and also these connections and put them all in the festival. That's all I can say about the Hybrid Fringe Festival right now.
Thank you. I'm going to continue with what Jakob evoked a bit. Actually, it's a big debate on the core of theater and performing arts, the liveness, physical presence, vitality. How can we have this liveness in with digital tools, in digital platforms? So I would like to continue in this way, and maybe we can talk about there is this idea in general of people who defend that theater is a live art and digitalization alienates the spectator. But actually, maybe we can ask how audiences can find new forms of agency with digital creations, how the use of new technologies transform the experience of audiences with the creation on the stage, and how they can maybe give us more intense experiences. Burcu, would you like to start maybe with your, I think, theoretical conception about the subject?
Yeah, so I think agency is a great way to start that conversation. Yeah, the thing that I was asking in the book was actually what kind of an agency does a spectator or an audience member has in a live performance? I mean, it's kind of liveness in that sense was exaggerated a little bit. Because actually in a movie theater or in theater, most of the time the spectator doesn't have that much of an agency. I mean, we're seated there and we're exposed to a narrative, and we have to sort of, we can of course draw our own conclusions. We can of course leave the physical space that we're in or respond to what's going on. And there could be some response from the stage, but most of the time it's designed that there's a narrative that's coming to us rather than we're going into a narrative. Of course, there have been immersive performances, physical performances, not virtual performances, that sort of give the audiences like Rimini Protocol, right? I mean, or like exploration of the city or something, and then there's narrative, you can choose between the different narratives, but still they're like defined choices, right? And so I think in terms of the agency I think theater, I mean, in the sense that it's usually being done, especially here in the United States, is not giving the audience any agency at all. So I think that's also some of the important aspects of the new technologies that we're using, is that we can actually give the audience a little bit more agency. And I think there was one performance that I haven't personally seen, but often read about, which came during the pandemic here, and it's called The Nest, and it was by a Scout Expedition Co. And it was, for example, about a woman who had died, and you would go to her storage, and then you would actually click on the different objects that were in the storage room. And from those objects, different narratives were told about that woman. And you can just click on as many in whatever order to those objects to be able to hear the snippets of the story of a woman's life, and then just get into her life without her ever being present there. So you as the spectator was the person who was actually present there, not the woman herself. So yeah, and there will be many other technologies, and I'm sure Jakob actually is using those technologies a lot, that immerse the audience and give the audience a lot more agency than a traditional live theatrical performance does.
Thanks a lot for this start. I think you gave us a lot of elements to reflect upon together. And actually, I found it very interesting when I looked a bit into Jakob's latest creations. you talked about the artificial awakening, the luminous body, and I found it very interesting that you define it as an experimentation between mysticism and XR, and it is a ceremonial XR performance for live audience targeting seekers of transcendence. So there's this element of mysticism and transcendence in this creation, and I think it will be very interesting for us to learn a bit about this creation and your take on how, with these digital tools, you worked with the concept of immersion and transcendence, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to share a little more about it. I think it would be nice to see a little visuals. So, so I'm just going to share some slides here. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Artificial Awakening was a 7-year-long dream that I've had of combining VR and performance. So I started my journey with VR for 7 years ago, and I immediately, as many other people have, saw the potential of combining this medium with that like a virtual headset that where you can be in like a digital environment with your body. I saw the potential of combining that with performing arts. So I used 7 years to experiment with all sorts of different elements, hoping that I could build up like all that I needed to do an actual performance in VR. And with Artificial Awakening, the dream came true. So before Artificial Awakening, we had to kind of start a network just to make the foundation. So we started XR Black Box, me and Mads Damsbo. We have, so it's two companies, it's Makropol and Jakob la Cour studio that went together. And instead of having our own separate different experiments, we kind of combined them. And then we began to invite a lot of other people into this network. And now we have like plus 15 theaters, education, and different suppliers. And it's a platform for artists, designers, developers to explore this new field. And yeah, we are conducting all sorts of experiments within this field. And here are some of our partners. So now we have like focused on our attention towards this new piece, Artificial Awakening. And we managed to realize this vision. And the first version, called An Algorithmic Ceremony, took place in a big hall where they were building ships earlier. And in here, we kind of set up the whole thing. So very shortly, there is like a different character you meet. So it's to prime people for the experience. They have like a little ceremony in the beginning. It's all about like an AI that is striving to become awakened. So it's like this artificial intelligence is trying to get a spiritual awakening. And so how it was done, we kind of had conversations with all sorts of different actual artificial intelligence, asking them how we should do the ceremony. And then they would, like GPT-3 would explain how we should do different elements, and we would ask into all sorts of questions about it. So in this production, we have worked with this AI to make it so it could help us to make the content. So one of the things was that it wanted us to make people sacrifice their faces, and this is the situation where they sacrifice their face. So we took a picture of it, and then there was also the ceremony part where we would like have smoke around people and so on. And also they had like to eat a worm and have something to drink to it. So there was some kind of ingestion. And then they came to the circle, where here you can see the headsets is laying on the floor and the character, the channeler. So the channeler would be a character that would channel the AI and kind of like channel the ceremony. And then they would, the audience would go into the circle, and they would experience the thing. There would also be like a synchronizer that would take care of all the technical parts and so on. But also another thing, which is important, is that the whole experience took place at 4 different venues. So we had like a main venue and 3 satellite venues. So in 4 different cities, this ceremony was taking place exactly the same, with the same blue circle and so on. And then when the audience came to the blue circle, they would go into the virtual and they would meet each other, all the people from the different venues. And that was synchronized. So that's why we needed a synchronizer. And the synchronizer would be almost like a clockwork, making sure that everything was running, being in radio contact with all the 4 different cities, making sure that everyone was coming in at the right time. And then they would meet in VR. And here you can see like a little example of like what is going on inside the VR experience. So here in the background, you can kind of see a hand reaching out here, and you can see some floating heads. And all of this is participants, either physically there or at another place. And then also the channeler, you can see kind of this halo around one of them. That would be the channeler, the performer. And then people would explore and kind of engage with the environment, and have an experience in the ceremony. Yeah, and then in the end, they would kind of see the result of their sacrifice. So they had sacrificed their face like in the beginning, and then an AI during the experience, an AI had transformed these faces into like a living video installation, where it kind of tried to understand who they were and how they would look in like 1,000 years. Yeah. And then there would be kind of like an ending to it, where they would get painted as they were in VR. Yeah. So just to talk about this hybridity, the team consisted of not just performing artists, but also machine learning engineers, AI artists, VR artists, and all sorts of like different skills needed to do it. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. It's super interesting, actually. And it made me think of one of the concepts, again, that Burcu evokes in her book. I can't get ahead of giving references because I think it was a very, very good depiction. I find it very interesting that normally we approach performing arts as an art form reuniting people in the same space. So it's the space which creates community. It's the space which creates the bonds. But with the digital tools that you organize, like you showed, people who are in 4 different venues can share the same experience. It's maybe no more the space, but they share the same time. So I think it's very interesting that it transforms our way of thinking the performance arts and its essence itself. Would you like to?
Yeah, just I want to add to that I think it's important to understand that space is also relative, because here we work with the virtual space. It could be a streamed space. It could be like the digital space is also space in a way. It's important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's even the space that we're in right now, the Zoom space, I think proves that it's a different kind of physical, presence is possible. and the Zoom didn't exist a couple of years ago, but now it's almost like the only, for most, like for a year, it was the only space that we could actually use to meet other people and see them. I think that's also, yeah, I agree with Jakob that it's this, our understanding of space has also expanded. I mean, when like the telematic was something that people found really interesting at the time, like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, when different performers could come to the physical, to that space with the different people from other countries, or like audience members from different countries could actually be live streaming into a different space, and lots of very expensive technologies were used to enable that, like the satellite and everything. And now it's becoming, of course, much cheaper and more accessible. And the pandemic actually accelerated that a lot, right? Because it had to be accessible for education, business, and everything else to go on. So I think our understanding of space has shifted for the entire humanity a lot more than it would have if this pandemic hadn't taken place, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in that point, I can add that pandemic is a trigger for the adaptation of our existing technologies and spaces for people who doesn't actually use this before. After this try, people understood that it's possible to create these spaces, these new spaces, even in different platforms. That's why it changed. It just accelerated the change. The change was already happening as we see.
For sure. That was exactly my point, actually, how in an abstract level, it stretches, it expands our way of thinking the space. And of course, pandemics was an accelerating force, always an accelerating force. And I think it was a big challenge for us too. For example, in Istanbul Fringe Festival, we have started in 2019 with physical venues. And in our second year, we had to adapt ourselves to the pandemic conditions. And it was a long debate on, are we going to try the digital platforms, or it's against the essence of what are we doing, so maybe not. And finally, we had the decision to move our festival to online platforms, and we did that. And this year we're continuing in a hybrid form. And it was a very challenging exercise for us too. But I think there is this effect that we can create our own little agency in this situation and reverse the closing effect of COVID. Actually, maybe 2 years ago, we wouldn't think of organizing this panel because everybody is living in different cities. Burcu, you are in USA now. Jakob, I think you're in Copenhagen. Denizhan, you're in Istanbul. I'm in Paris. So it won't be that possible, but there is this opening and maybe democratizing event. As a social scientist, I'm trying to approach on this level too. It becomes more accessible for people maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just want to add that the other thing that I've been working on was the Luna Seconda, and here we were streaming the experience. I don't know if I have a little time to just share a little about that.
I think so. Yes, please.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting when we are going deeper into this conversation that we also have this example, because a lot of people have been like really not believing in the streaming format for theater. And I just want to share this example because we won the best performance of the year here in Denmark with this piece, and it's called Luna Seconda. And I just want to show some pictures just so you get an idea what kind of the feel of it. Let me see if I can do that in a smart way.
Yes. Congratulations, by the way. That's great news.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, it's not gonna be full screen, but let's just do it like this. See here. Okay, so yeah, Luna Secunda was this piece where we like so I was contacting a director on a theater. And just sharing that I've been thinking about this, like how can we do theater in this time? Everything is locked down. What should we do? I have these ideas about something, and she had like a piece that she wanted to do, and we were like, okay, let's see if we can do this. And then we went together and we kind of tried to find a concept. So what I was stressing was like having the possibilities of using these digital tools. And so I came in with that kind of as a digital designer on it. And also like really focusing on like how can we utilize these new technologies that we have. And I was increasingly interested in how you could expand on streaming, like how you could use there's a lot of tools within streaming that has been more focused on professionals, but then with the gaming industry we have seen a lot of new exciting ways of using these tools as well. So I talked with her about that, and we decided to make like a hybrid format. So we didn't exactly know how to do it in the beginning, but we were talking about like having a physical place and this digital place. And what it ended up being was actually a combination. So people would be able to go there physically, and we only made it for 5 audiences because at that time, only 5 people could be together in public. So we thought that they might allow us to do it if we have 5 audiences. And it was actually, we were following the restriction, but unfortunately all theaters had to be totally locked down when we did the piece. But it was ready for 5 audiences in the piece physically. And at the same time, everything was streamed. And we did that with 4, let's see if I can find, so here you can see how it was photo recorded all the time. And there was 4 cameras doing a one take during the whole performance and recording from different angles. So we have had a kitchen, a stage, a basement, a toilet, a living room, and so on. There was like different locations. And the cameraman would move around with the performers during the whole thing. And there would be a live editor. Let's see if I have a picture of this. Yeah, here. So here you can see there's a live editor sitting with the different input from the cameras and like live editing as a broadcast experience. And then we would also have like this screen up here where people would be able to look at what is being recorded in the house. So the people who were sitting there physically, they would see like live footage from around the house and also what is going on actually live in front of them. And then the audience would see the same as it was projected on the screen. So we would play a lot with all sorts of layers of things that was there physically and things that was there only recorded digitally. And I think also another point that was important was that to give that kind of liveness, it was performed every night. We could have recorded it in reality and then replayed it, but we wanted that kind of feel of liveness. So we also had like this character, like people would be able to call in and talk with the performer, and he would give them a special gift, and everyone would follow this on their stream. And we would also have like a lobby before the experience began. So in the lobby, people would click in, and there would be a little chat function, and there would be this person saying, "Yeah, you can write here. Oh, people from Poland, welcome, wonderful." And then she would like interact with people, the audience, before the show started, and you could hear like people would say like, okay, 5 minutes to until we begin, and you got that feeling of it's going on right now, and we have to be present right now to do it. And the whole show was like with paid tickets and the full setup. Yeah, so that was Luna Secunda, just on focusing on that aspect of the streaming part.
Yeah, that may be another part. We are also getting experience on managing online performances. For example, this time issue that you mentioned, Jakob, I think is very important. When the pandemic came first, you know, all the theaters, most of them, even in Europe, in US, they opened their platforms, and we were able to see every performances which is recorded before online. But then also us, our motivation for following these events decreased, and then we started to search for events with time and go there and exist, not even physically, but online. But we are also having these experiences to manage how to find solutions to make people more engaged in these activities.
Yeah, exactly. And that will be my next question, actually, because it requires to operate in this level different know-how and interdisciplinary approach, maybe, because it's no more performing artists in between themselves, but in the technical operation, management, designing, and I'm sure I don't know all of them actually, who you need to realize that kind of a project. And I would like to ask actually, so how do you think, maybe Burcu, you can start, how do you think that this new creations transform the field in a more interdisciplinary way?
Yeah, so I have one example from the pandemic time that I want to talk about. And I also, before going back to that, I think what Jakob and what Denizhan are telling about, and you said about the democratization of like accessibility, it was really awesome to reach to those productions by Schaubühne Berlin, and productions from Theater Complicité and everything that I have no reach right now to see physically. And I agree with Denizhan that dropped a little bit. And then we started searching for things that sort of have a consciousness about what they're doing, right? Know that they're using this digital technology to create something that also has a sense of liveness. That just is so amazing, because it just brings me back to this article that I haven't really talked about in the book, but it's by Walter Benjamin, right? The art of, I can't exactly remember the name of it, but it's actually talking about how photography actually democratized the arts, because it made images so accessible to the public. But then the sense of liveness, what happened to the sense of liveness? And when Jakob was mentioning that, how do we create that sense of liveness in the theater again, I think is very important, and something that's going to be explored even more. So I'll just talk about one experience that I had personally as an audience member in terms of that liveness. There was a performance actually created by two people that I knew that are from the same school that I graduated. And it was called The Russian Troll Farm. It was a performance, like Jakob said, it was streamed. It was streaming images from different houses. So the know-how was, yes, there was like a person who was just putting those images together. And then each actor was sent a lighting kit to their houses so that they could create their own sets and light designs and everything within their houses to tell the story. And the story was actually about this political thing, discussion about the Russian trolls affecting the elections in the United States. But it was told from the perspective of the Russian trolls, and how they were actually trying to do this thing. And then there was like other images that were added to the performance. Very, very brilliant, very, very funny. And at the end, there was actually a trick where you think that two people are actually in the different rooms physically, but then they're husband and wife. So they're both actors, and then they actually merge and kiss each other. And there's that physical thing that actually makes the performance even more interesting. But what happened during the performance, and that brings me to the point of accessibility. And Jakob, like you did this performance with 5 people, right? And then it was streamed to other people. I think that's going to become, 2 things are going to be very important. First, during the performance, actually our performance was interrupted because of streaming reasons, because the technology doesn't always work the way we want it to work. So there was like a half an hour gap that some of the audience members couldn't see. And then they asked us that because it was recorded, they gave us the permission to go back and watch what was going on in that half an hour, which was not the live experience that we were expecting to have. And the other thing actually is the know-how is, yes, some theater companies, some countries have that know-how more than the other ones. So that's also something that actually is a question in terms of the democratization of the digital platform as well. Because, you know, we're going to go on with VR and artificial intelligence and all sorts of different performances that we don't even know right now, right? It's going to go on and it's going to become spectacular, but at the same time, there will be theater companies who cannot perhaps catch up with that technology because of the financial reasons as well. And just one more example, and then I'll give it to Jakob. For example, there was another performance that I wanted to see, which was taking place in Istanbul, actually, by, I think it was Ceren's performance. Mark and Ceren were designing it. And yes, exactly. I wanted to see it that much, and it was so good because I was going to be able to see something in Istanbul, but my iPhone's level was not enough to be a part of that for performance. But at the time I had the other one that wasn't 12, so I couldn't actually see the performance. So that's also something that we should be aware of and thinking of while we're trying to reach to broader audiences with this digital technology.
Yeah, thanks a lot actually for talking about this part of the democratization. Just a little note before giving the word to Jakob. I think it's also a bit of an illusion to think the digital space, the internet, as equal and accessible for everybody, thus democratic per se. For example, now in Lebanon, the access to Wi-Fi, it's a huge issue after the economical crisis. It is not accessible. Or you talked about the streamings, actually. Me too. First, I was really happy to being able to see, but at some point, for example, it was really nice to see Şabune's Hamlet because it was produced by Arte with a very good quality and edited with a very good quality. So I didn't have any problem to watch it for 3 hours. But for example, the alternative theaters in Istanbul, they had some streamings, but production and so video production of a performance is it has a high cost and it requires a big know-how. So if it's filmed in a handycam with just one handycam, it's not really promising as an experience to watch it. So these introduce, of course, the differences in access to know-how to technology, and of course, the money comes an issue, the class comes as an issue. And so Jakob, maybe if you like to say some things about this democratization part, and maybe I think it will be really interesting for you to talk us about your work process. So to realize this project, how do you work, with who do you work with, different fields, technicians, how do you operate to make people from different universes, different professions communicate and collaborate with each other?
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to like remember all I need to say.
I talked a lot.
Okay. Okay. So democratization of this field. Yeah, some experiences is not for everyone. So some experiences is just only for like a selected few. So for example, right now with the artificial awakening, I'm actually working towards a vision where I can do a performance with people that have VR headsets. And that is a selected few in a sense. Even though a couple of millions have been sold, it's still like a very little when you talk about worldwide. And it's of course a very selected few that has these kind of VR headsets. So I just want to say that some things is for a selected few because you need to do that to explore those new areas. Mm-hmm. And also just that's a common knowledge within, like when you produce things, you know that if you want to target everyone, it's gonna like miss. So sometimes you kind of need to target someone. So that's one part of it. But the other part is that the accessibility of these technologies. So for example, with virtual reality, you can buy like a very cheap cardboard version, put your smartphone in it and you have VR. So in that way, and I did that for 30,000 youngsters here in Denmark with another project, where we send out these cardboards to all the children, and they could put phones in them and then could experience a VR experience, a 15-minute experience. But so there's like different layers all the time. And also I would say with streaming, so for example, Zoom here, I saw this beautiful piece called Everything is Impossible, with the 6 actors doing a live performance on Zoom with their phones. And it was beautiful. They were choreographing these different windows to like do like a whole performance, and it was so well made. And they just streamed it. I don't know exactly, but they could have streamed it just on free on YouTube if they wanted. So I would say the accessibility is there. Of course, you need someone that has this technology knowledge to realize it. But I would say, for example, so I was in charge of the whole streaming part, and before the pandemic here, I didn't know anything besides like maybe like a Zoom or something like that. So everything I had to learn from the ground. Of course, I have like a big knowledge within technology in general, but everything that I learned through YouTube tutorials and stuff like that. And I kind of collected like different knowledge from different places. And in the end, I kind of made this piece with all these elements. And of course, our piece was cool. It was a budget-friendly thing in Denmark, but it was, I don't know how it would be worldwide, but relatively low budget, I would say, compared to like some of the offers that I got when I went out and like asked big companies to do this for us. It was like totally another league than what I ended up actually making it for. But so I would say like there is so much knowledge available to us on YouTube and social media that we can get all this knowledge to do these things. Okay, so that was a little about that. So how do we do this? So I already almost explained like how I did it with the Luna Secunda piece. But if you go deeper into it, it's like, do you want to know more technicality about it, or like, because I could go really geeky with this, or is it more like what team do we need, or like what is your focus?
I think so. I think maybe it will be interesting for our audiences to learn about what kind of a team do you bring together, and how. So normally, I think those are people who are not that used to working with each other. So how you create a team that can speak the same language and collaborate together?
Yeah, I think the most difficult was artificial awakening, because here we had, and that was also the most different way of doing it, because in Luna Secunda we actually did almost like a normal production where you have rehearsals and then you do the thing. But and we did have like a little development workshops before the rehearsals, just to make sure that some of our ideas about the streaming concept worked. But a lot of it was done in a traditional way where you have like rehearsal and show. It was different with Artificial Awakening. I was the director of that piece and also the writer of that piece. So, and I already knew that you had to do it in a different way than normally. So what I did was I cut the whole production in two, and I started with doing everything online, because we also had like developers around the world. So we used a tool called Miro board. I don't know if you know it, but it's an amazing tool. It's almost like a whiteboard tool where you can collaborate with visuals and text and so on. And we use this in combination with Zoom. So that was like our workstation. So every day for 5 weeks, we would meet the core team, which would consist of me as a director, a VR artist, an AI artist, and a producer that would come once in a while, but and also like a composer that would be there pretty much all the time, and a sonographer. So all of us, this core team, would meet for 5 weeks every day on this Miro board and discuss like different elements and try to figure out. And then we would go like and do some analog work, each of us, and then we would meet and like discuss it on Miro boards. And that was because it was very important to get all this done before going on set, because I needed to know that the technical thing worked and so on before we could go on set. And I'm really happy that I made this choice. And also because when you work with technology, everything is possible and everything can be done. Like it's like you can just keep on going. So what I did was like I put a deadline on where we would say, after this time, there's no more new technical features. So there was another learning that I'm really happy that I did. So I put that date 5 weeks before the premiere. So on that date, we couldn't do any more new technical features. And after that, we met on set. And then, of course, there was a lot of fine-tuning still on the technical part, but we had like the whole system and the main content and all the technical features before we went on set. Then when we went on set, we built up everything, and then we began to test and we made adjustments to that. And that was a way that we actually managed to do this piece and ended up with a complete experience. So yeah, it was a lot of work of having like a whole technical team, because besides this, we also had like machine learning engineers, we have developers, we had like developers for like specific Unity. It was all built in with a program called Unity, a game engine actually. And there was like specific things that needed to be coded and so on. And we need special people for that. So besides, like I had a core team that was there for the full duration, but besides that, I also in my budget had the opportunity to call in specific knowledge for specific problems. And we would do this all the time. It could be like, because there are so many things in regards to AI, in regards to VR, and also in regards to performing arts, like different, like how do we do all like different problems. So yeah, it was like having these different areas, focusing on them, and like figuring out how I could solve these small hurdles all the time, because it is a minefield of challenges to make this work, and I'm actually a little surprised myself that it worked. And also I would say that there was some time where it didn't work, like there was errors, but me and the producer were like calculating and say, we accept that there is a certain amount of people that will have an element that will be a showstopper for them, which meaning that the headset would not work or something like that. And we tried to, like during the whole thing, like find things that we could solve it, like having an extra headset or like doing like things that could solve these things, but sometimes you couldn't just solve it. But so that's another thing. Not everyone will be willing to have like a percentage of their audience not getting the experience and like failing for the experience. It wasn't huge, but it was a percentage of the people I knew from the beginning that there will be some kind of technical problem. I cannot solve it, and that will just be the thing. And at least 2 persons I know got this experience, and also 1 person for this that I just did this weekend. And that's kind of almost like the price that you need to accept. Also with the Luna Secunda, we had one of the 30 or 26 performances that we did was canceled because of streaming issues. But I think that's an acceptable risk to take. And that's also the thing with technology. Like you gotta pray to the tech gods to make it work. And there's so many components that has to work in synchronicity. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's relatively new. We are still in progress of excelling, still experimenting maybe. So to conclude this panel, I would like to maybe have your last words about how do you envision the future of this hybridization of technologies and performing arts?
Right. In that point, I can also add a little bit about the context of the stories we are telling, why we use technologies for telling these stories. We start with stories, right? With sentences and with some subjects common internationally or locally. And we find a way, a tool, a theater, film, music, or a VR performance, and we choose the best way how to tell this story to the audiences. And in that point, I am very thrilled with this broadening potential of VR and AR for telling people stories about their inner experiences. We start using user experience, which is changing also the context of the stories we are telling each other. That's why the last year when we said we are organizing this festival this year hybrid, and we are accepting online some applications which is designed for online streaming. We also started to have this kind of applications which are designed for online streaming. It was different before. We didn't have, we were just having videos of the performances for physical. But in that way, we also see that the stories are also changing a little bit. because when you put a new context, like that's a new tool, like the usage of light in theater, for example. It's something else. It's something new, and it will also change our normal practice, how to install the teams. Also, for example, a VR designer now in an art team, he will also, or she will also contribute differently. That's for sure. I think that's why the question about the team of Jakob was very authentic, and how they correlate and collaborate each other. It's also different. And there are some tools like Miro. We also use Milanote. I think it's great to mention these platforms also in here to inform people about how to gather together in different collaborative tools like that.
Thank you, Denizhan. Burcu, what would you like to say for the future of this field?
Well, it's huge. I think all of these technologies that are tested right now are going to become more common in the future for people, and people will be able to get that know-how pretty quickly, as we did over a year. And then the storytelling part of it, I think, is I think that's going to be really, really interesting to watch how it's going to develop because of the way that, for example, the game technology has a way ahead way of storytelling in terms of creating those immersive atmospheres and pulling the audiences into the performance. And it's developing much, much faster than it is for the live arts or performing arts. And I think it's going to become even more common to expect that in the future for the theater as well, because I think the audiences will like being a part of that performances and having the ability to decide on their own ways of participating within a performance. I think that's going to change, and it's going to become really liberating in one sense. But in the other sense, from what Jakob was telling about how they collaborated and everything, and those rehearsals that took place, I was just thinking, how is it different from a regular rehearsal that you would actually have? There are kind of similarities as well. For example, you work with your actor, which is the artificial intelligence, that actor also is the means, the media itself, which is kind of different. And then you brought it to the audience, and there were some technical difficulties and stuff that you experienced, like 2% of those audiences will have a technological. Well, that happens in live theater too. I mean, there are all those glitches in live theater where it's not accessible. Something goes wrong, there's a wrong entrance or something, something there's this vulnerability that we think is absent from the digital media or the live performance, but it's there all the time. And it is also something that is a part of that theatrical or the digital experience itself. I'm looking forward to seeing how storytelling will evolve in the future. I think it's really important.
Thank you. And Jakob, in XR Black Box website, you have the slogan "Performing Arts for Future." So I think you have much to share with us.
Yeah, it's like it's hard for me to explain what I feel that I have seen with the things that I've done on Artificial Awakening. I just see, I just know now that this is going to be a big part of our future, because I can see what it can do right now. It's like theater haven't had a technology that could digitalize it, but it's here now, and it's not just in the future, it's here now. So for example, this piece right now, we tested this weekend, we tested a more virtual version. So now actually the performer was in a separate room, not even in costume or anything, just wearing a headset. And then in the VR experience, of course, it had the avatar body with everything. And what we are preparing right now is like having an experience where you can, where I can almost just call the actor and say, do you have half an hour or an hour to do a show? And then we can set up a show in Copenhagen where she can just take on her headset wherever she is, and then she can go in and perform on stage, on our virtual stage. And then you can have like either people just having a VR headset themselves, or we can distribute it to them and give them what they need to make like a little setup, and then they can have an experience. And it's going to be total virtual experience with a real feeling of having a performer acting for you, doing something that is unique, live presence. So it's here already. So this kind of thing is not in the future, it's here. But of course, in the future, when much more people will have these headsets and have this like access to this kind of technology, and it will just be such a normal part of what we do. And I think the performing arts has a really important role within this field, and I feel that they haven't had like the focus like enough. But you see, like for example, Venice Film Festival just had like they gave a big prize to the most interactive part, which was also like a totally wild experience. I can't remember the name in my but check out Venice Film Festival. We can put it in the description of the YouTube video. But it just a mind-blowing piece as well, where people wear these big backpacks and like everything is in a virtual world. And so that's just a part of it. I think virtual reality has like a lot to say, but also augmented reality. So we just did like a test with the newest augmented reality possibilities, and it's also really mind-blowing, because you can have your normal world around you, so you can build like a set, but then suddenly you can add a virtual a digital element to that set that can be manipulated and transform things. So I just been teaching at the Danish Performing Arts School, what the scenographers built of ideas when they worked with this XR field was like they were focusing on the transition. So you would have like a transition from physical to augmented reality to virtual reality, and then back to physical or augmented reality. And I think that kind of change will be very normal to use these kind of changes. So you have like, suddenly you have a physical experience, you see things, you walk around, it will become, I hope personally that it will become much more immersive. So I totally agree with that. That having like your own agency, participatory experiences within the experience, where you can decide what will happen and so on. So the physical aspects is very important. But then I think the technologies will be so you kind of have like the augmented reality. So you get like a digital element on top of the physical. And then sometimes you immerse totally into the virtual and do things that is impossible within the physical. So we're gonna explore like how we can cancel some of the laws in our own reality with this new reality. So for example, gravity is a constant thing that we're dealing with in this reality. But in virtual reality, you don't have that problem. So you can like do things that is with non-gravity, and also like other production issues like changing set all the time, or having huge things that is besides what you have capacity in the room that you're doing things in. Stuff like that you can do in virtual reality easily. So I think it's just gonna be so attractive that we're gonna see this everywhere. And it will be the future way of digitalizing performing arts. Yeah.
Thank you for this mind-broadening example that you give. Thank you all for this panel. I think it was really, really interesting for me. And I would just like to remind that Istanbul Fringe Festival is taking place between 18th and 26th of September 2021. And as it's designed as a hybrid festival, we have performances in physical venues, but also online streamings of some performances that are accessible from all around the world. So don't hesitate to follow us on our social media and from our website, fringeistanbul.com. Thank you, Burcu Yasemin Şeyben. Thank you, Jakob la Cour, and thank you, Denizhan, for being together with us today on this panel on new technologies and performing arts.
And thank you, Zeynep, for opening place for talking about technology and art in here.
Yeah. Same. Thank you so much.
Lovely.